otherwise towards the end of this 30-minute webinar. So first of all, before we talk about transformation in more detail, let us, a lot of people ask the question, so why should we actually be transforming? And the best research that was done on the topic was conducted by Capgemini Consulting, and they found that across different organizations in different sectors, they actually went through 184 different corporations, and they found that overall, those who are leading the way in transformation actually have a revenue generation that is 9% higher than the rest of the people in the industry. So that means 9% more money coming in. They also have a higher profitability, so profits, which is the revenues minus the costs, so 26%, which is very significant in most, if not all, industries, higher than their competition. And the market valuation, which is the value of the company, so whether it's a listed company, look at the share price, that's 12% higher. Now, like I've been saying, digital transformation is about really two things, okay, especially in supply chain transformation. We're talking about, number one, the digital investments. So this is all the purchases you make into the field of technology. And when we talk about digital here, we're talking, of course, beyond the laptops and mobile phones and routers. We'll talk a bit more about the different technologies available to us. And there's also the transformation management. So how do you manage those investments? Is it centralized, or do you work in silos? Do you have a head of transformation management, or does your IT guy, take charge of that? So we'll talk about that. But what I want to say right now, I want to point out that if you look at these as basically dichotomies, so some people do well on number one, digital investments. They always experiment in new technology. And some companies, they don't experiment in new technology. Some companies have good transformation management practices. Some companies are not even close. So you end up with four types of organizations. Yes, 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 no, no, yes, or yes, yes, or you can say high and low. Now, where you want to be is you want to have high investments in digital investments or in digital technology, and you want to do the transformation management properly. Companies who do both, effectively, we call those the digiratis, okay? And these are the companies who are doing well both revenue-wise and also profit-wise. Now, some companies, they like to invest in all these technologies, but they're not really sure about how to implement those, okay? And by the way, part of the mindset, part of the culture of digital transformation is you are going to experiment, okay, which takes a lot of guts and risk-taking, and you are going to fail, okay? A lot of companies, they don't invest because they're worried about failure. No, failure, you fail once, you fail twice, but eventually it's going to get you where you want to be. Now, the companies who invest heavily but lack a proper governance structure, lack a proper transformation management, which is number two, these companies a lot of the time have high revenues. So they have more money coming in, but guess what? Their cost structure is also very high, which means profit go down. And the companies who have no digital investments, okay, but have a lot of transformation management or good transformation management practices, these guys tend to do better profit-wise as a percentage, but the revenues stay down. Okay, so point number one here gives you revenues. Point number two gives you profit. But if you want to have both, you're going to have to actually do both. So let's start getting into what digital investments are, and after that, we'll talk about transformation management. Now, digital investments, again, we're going to talk about 9 specific ones. So we'll introduce 4, and then another 5, and then we're going to talk about the all-important topic of data, so having the right data. But let's start with the top line over there, blockchain, AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality. We'll talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and we're going to talk about 3D printing. And how do we use these in supply chain management? Now, remember, a supply chain is going to be a chain, just like a regular chain. It's a grouping of entities. So one entity, let's say, sources raw materials from the earth. So you can get apples from a tree, you can get fish from the sea, oil from a mine. And then what they do is they sell it to another company that does something with that, processes it, and passes it on to the next company, and the next company, and the next company. And all of these together become the chain. Now, those of you at the front side, okay, let's say working in the shipping sector of supply chains and logistics, a lot of the challenges you suffer are going to be related with, first of all, making the contract, agreeing on the terms of the contract. A lot of the challenges are to do with the payments. So those of you with experience working on letters of credit, NLC, or guarantees, letters of guarantee, or even expression of interest, it's just a whole lot of headache that we would love to avoid if we can. LCs, of course, they involve multiple banks, they involve multiple parties, and anytime you have a mistake, you have to go back through the whole chain. So one way to get across all of these, the documentation, the payment, and the contract, is to use the technology of blockchain. Now, blockchain, recently it got a lot of bad feedback from the press, especially with the Bitcoin craze and the Bitcoin bubble. But really, it's a lot more than that. And in supply chain, one company that's been doing a lot of good work there is VACT, and so that's VAKT. And what they have is basically a ledger. Okay, so it's like, think of a ledger as a book. Every time you have an entry, you note it down. So now, instead of issuing, let's say, the purchase order or the contract, and then issuing a pro forma invoice, and then getting the letter of credit, and then getting the shipping documents, the bill of lading, the certificate of origin, the quality certifications, the invoices, instead of having all of these different documents, what you can do is you can digitize all of those in one blockchain entry, and then what happens is you start building on that entry. So there's a couple of videos that illustrate that. You can go on YouTube. I just wrote the name of that company, VAKT. You can look into a couple of their videos. They'll tell you exactly how blockchain works in the context of supply chain. It just saves you. It's all value driven, by the way. The customer is happy, costs are lower, and customer service is definitely improved. Now, the other technology we talk about is augmented reality / virtual reality, so AR or VR. Now, the difference between AR and VR is, it's a big difference. Augmented reality is basically, I see everything in front of me, but then you have additional pieces of information showing up, kind of like the Google Glass they try to invest in. So I put my glasses on, and let's say I'm inside a warehouse, I'm looking at different items in the warehouse, and what I'm gonna get is a similar system to the heads-up display. Those of you who drive a new BMW, you see the information just floating in front of you, kind of like in midair, okay? So augmented reality, another example is the Pokemon Go, if you remember that game. So what you do is you have your phone cameras open, and you're looking for the Pokemon monsters. You see a reality in front of you, but it's augmented with additional pieces of information. Now, virtual reality is different. It's basically, I close my eyes and I have a screen I'm looking at, and I'm seeing a different world that is virtual. Okay, it's something that's not tangible. It's all digital. It's all made up digitally. And both, of course, have huge implications on supply chains. Augmented reality is about, some applications are to help you, find your way around in a warehouse, especially if you have, hundreds of thousands or millions of SKUs in your warehouse. Virtual reality today, we see it a lot in other applications, such as the training of your staff. Artificial intelligence is another one. So AI basically, it's about having an algorithm make the decisions for you. Okay, and the idea is if you have the right algorithm, that means you can have the right decision every single time moving forward. And the algorithm usually gets smarter and smarter and smarter. And there are many examples over there to illustrate the value of artificial intelligence. Those of you who use Google Translate, if you remember 7-8 years ago when it first came out, you'd write in something and you get the translation that didn't make sense. But as people went along, the system starts to learn from itself. It gets better and better and better. And then eventually, fed the right data, without the right data, no algorithm will give you the right decisions. But fed the right data, you will be able to make better decisions. I'll give you an example here from the fruit world, okay, where I grew up, certainly. You go to a supermarket and they have fruits on the stands, let's say bananas, okay? Very perishable items. If I don't sell them, I throw them. If I have overstocks, I throw them. If I have understocks, I lose the opportunity of a sale. So either way, I'm actually losing money. So today, what supermarkets do is they are generating data from 60 to 70 different data points. And based on that, they will take the decision on how many bananas should be on the shelves. Now, where does the data come from? Anywhere from cameras, credit cards. So they go through the data on what you spent and how much money what are your patterns of spending. They look at your Google Maps, so where have you actually been? They look at your Facebook searches, they look at your likes and your clicks. Okay, and based on that, they derive behavior around how the consumer acts, and based on that, we can actually start taking decisions to serve our operations. So artificial intelligence could be linked here to sourcing your vehicles, to the spot stocking of different items that you might have in different warehouses. And again, the more you use it, the smarter the system gets, and the more you'll be able to benefit from it in a supply chain perspective. Now, 3D printing, okay, obviously it's the technology is still at the nascent stages, but it's getting more and more relevant. And it's basically about printing an item in 3 dimensions. So for example, if I have this pen, I want to print this pen, I can print this pen 3D at home. And what this does, or how this helps in a supply chain perspective, is that you can print data, you can print materials, okay, raw materials, just in time. You save on the shipping, you save on overstocks, you save on investments in inventory, and then basically you can print the item when you need it and also where you need it. So very useful as well for supply chain management. Now, moving forward, we'll talk about as well robotics. Okay, so a lot of warehouses now have automatic storage and retrieval systems. So that's ASRS. And you have automated warehouses now, either fully automated or something such as what Amazon have with the Kiva robots, where you have a robot that goes and drives and brings back the shelf racks to the picker, and then instead of you going to the item in the warehouse, the item actually comes to you. So robotics is today very relevant in warehouses, in supply chain management. You have ad technology as well. So ad technology is the way you actually promote your items on digitally, okay, so on browsers and on social media. Now, how does that relate to supply chain? Well, obviously, what we're trying to do with supply chain is we're trying to match supply with demand. So I see a comment by Naila. I'll come back to answer your question, Naila, about virtual reality towards the end. So again, ad tech is so we want to, a supply chain is supply and demand. So if you have oversupply, so if you're supplying more than your company can sell, you have overstocks and you lose money. If you have undersupply, what that means is a customer is going to come there and you're going to say, sorry, I'm out of stock. The first time, the second time, guess what happens the third time? They stop coming. The drones are, of course, the next big thing in supply chain management, okay? And you can, so the drones recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, the technology improved immensely. And that's why there's a lot of talk about drones. Now, the main problem with drones is not the technology. The technology is there. It's fantastic. It's great. It's cheap. It's point to point. The problem is the regulation, the laws, okay, the legal element. And of course, with that comes the risks for, spying risks, spying, on your neighbors or flying over someone's house. Or even if a drone falls from the sky, lands on someone and hurts them, or lands on your property or a car. So there's a lot of legal work that needs to be sorted out. But the technology is so good that this will not be going away. On the contrary, I imagine, in maybe 3 or 4 years, anytime you look outside your window, you're going to see highways, okay, in the air, just drones flying through. Your pizza delivery gets there quicker. Even those of you working in the fields, let's say oil fields, you're in the middle of the desert, you have these large items, emergency items, critical items. You have drones that nowadays can actually pick up half a ton, 500 kilograms, and take them to your spot. Medical emergencies as well. So the benefits are tremendous, but what we need is for the regulation to catch up. Self-driving cars, of course. So there's a couple of companies. We have Tesla working on it. We have Google Drive working on it. We have Smart working on it. Again, self-driving cars with more and improved artificial intelligence, with improved augmented reality, these cars will become safer than a person driving a car, okay, on the long run. Now, the problem is anytime you have an accident with a self-driving car, it's going to get a lot more media attention than cars driven by a person. Already you have a lot of gated communities. So in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, I've seen those where you actually have cars or shuttle buses for the employees inside the compound that are self-driving. Okay, so again, you save on costs, and plus, unfortunately, a lot of people will lose their jobs anytime you have new technology. But the trick is to re-skill your people or outskill your people so that now they can be involved more in the management of the technologies than in actually, let's say, driving the car. So a self-driving car can drive 24 hours a day. It can go on the grid. Think of it, if you have a car, think of your Uber application. You just say, okay, I'm at home. I drive my car for 2 hours a day, 22 hours. The car is parked outside. Let me just swipe and put my car on the grid. The car just takes off on its own. It can operate as a Google car. So for a population of 1 million, instead of requiring 400,000 cars, you can probably operate with 20 or 30,000 cars or maybe 50,000 cars. And that's going to put a lot less stress on the environment and on the costs as well. Finally, the Internet of Things is basically when you're linking everything to the internet. Okay, so we see that today in homes. So I have my TV connected to my application. I have my air conditioner, the lights in the room, the alarm clock, the shower, the water heater. Everything is connected to the internet. And the idea is to centralize everything from a single point of contact. So one interface. Usually we go for omni-channels. So I can do it through my iPhone, or I have the same account. I can access my account from my laptop. So that's the Internet of Things. And of course, it has a lot of uses. Now, none of these technologies can work effectively and efficiently if you don't have the right data. Okay, so the right data at the right time, and the data needs to be cleansed. Okay, a lot of us have databases that are not cleansed. So let's say you might have the same customer or the same supplier under 5 different names, or you might have an item at the warehouse. On the system, it's one item, but on the system, you have it 3 or 4 or 5 times. Why? Because simply the way the data was put in was not very cleansed. Okay, so these are the main technologies. Now, there's more technologies coming along at an increasingly fast rate. And again, today with the coronavirus happening, the world has basically changed, and we have no choice but to invest in these different technologies. Okay, so just off the bat, imagine you have a self-driving car right now that can go to the supermarket, get your stuff, or imagine the drone can come to you. So there is no human-to-human contact, and that makes things more efficient and cheaper. So that's the first part. Okay, part number 1. Remember, we've been talking about digital transformation as made of 2 parts: the investments, which we just covered, and the second part is the transformation management. Now, what is transformation management? So here we're going to talk about 3 things. Okay, the way you manage your investments at the company, at the organizational level. We're going to talk about the vision that you have, or the long-term strategy that you have. We're going to talk about governance. So in Arabic, governance is al-hawkama, so how you manage your company. And we're going to talk about the actual culture that you have. Now, so Muhammad, we have started. We're already 20 minutes into this. If anyone cannot access the video or cannot hear me, what we'll be doing is we'll be posting everything on YouTube, and you can access the video on YouTube. Now, with regards to the vision, okay, the companies need to take a decision. They need to say, look, we're either in the game or we're not in the game. And here you have to integrate your transformation management practices into your long-term goals. So when you go to your pillars or your bonus scorecard or whatever you have at your company, there needs to be something that says, listen, transformation of supply chain operations is an objective. You might have a VP, a vice president, or a director leading that objective, and this is something that needs to be done. Okay, you need to have a flexible route. So you cannot be very rigid here, because the way that technology evolves is very fast. Okay, you have new technology coming up every day practically right now. And if you say, I want to do it this way, but suddenly a new technology comes over and you have to do it that way, if you're too flexible, you will not succeed. So you always have to have an open mind and keep things flexible to succeed. With regards to the governance, we talk about a CDO. So we've all heard of CEOs and COO and CMOs. What is a CDO? It's basically, we are talking about the Chief Digital Transformation Officer. And here we're not talking about the head of IT. IT, remember, it's usually limited to the infrastructure, the laptops, the modems, the firewalls. Digital transformation here, we're talking about all the technologies that we mentioned earlier. And this person, nowadays, in most organizations that really have taken transformation to the next steps, companies like, for example, Amazon, the CDO is the second most important man at the company or woman at the company after the CEO. You also need to have centralized digital oversight, which means everything, all the investments have to be made under one centralized command. Okay, you cannot operate in silos. You cannot have different people work on different things. Everything needs to come together for this to succeed. Finally, with regards to the culture, the focus will always be on the customer. What does the customer want? What does the customer want? If you are not obsessed with your customer, that means you risk losing focus and therefore losing sight of where you are taking your organization. Data-enabled metrics, you need to have a culture of collecting data. Everything, every decision needs to be based on data. You cannot base decisions on feelings or, a lot of people talk about, many authors and books and things have been done around, I feel that this is a good idea, or I know from experience this is a good idea. Nowadays, we take the Ray Dalio approach, which is, do the numbers, does the data support this decision? If it does, we go ahead. If it doesn't, forget about it. And third of all, of course, a culture of innovation. And what that means, really, at the essence, is that you are ready to fail, okay? You are ready to innovate, because with innovation comes failure. If never try, never know. And you need to be ready not only to fail, but you have to fail fast, okay? So you try something out. If it works, you go ahead with it. If it fails, don't say, okay, I'll give it 1 more month or 2 more months or 3 more months. You need to fail fast so that you can move on, be agile to move on to the next thing. So that's basically an introduction of what it means to be digitally transforming your supply chain. If you have any questions, please go ahead and post them on the chat box. Now, let me just go back in the meantime to answer Naila's question about virtual reality. Virtual reality is basically, so let's say, as opposed to virtual reality is basically I'm looking at a screen. Okay, so you have these, you can have these masks where you have your phone, and I am actually looking at a screen. I'm looking at my phone or at a TV or at a screen, and it's a reality that's been created digitally. Augmented, the word augmented means improved, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm keeping reality. So I'm looking around, I see this map, for example, here behind me. This is there, physically there, but how can I improve it? So the way to improve it is I'm going to, through usually a vision glasses, I'm going to have some pieces of data come up in the form of bubbles, okay? So as I look at this map, I'm going to have, so this is South America over here. I'm going to have a bubble that says South America. I can still see the map, but through my glasses, I can also have more information related to what I am doing. Another application is, for example, let's say you go to the stadium after the COVID-19 to watch a football game, okay? But you're sitting in the stadium, you don't know who the players are, you're sitting too far. Augmented reality glasses, what they'll do is every time someone has the ball, it's like watching FIFA, PlayStation on your TV. You get the name of the player, you get details about the player, how many passes they did, what's their speed, etc. You're starting to get all of these pieces of information through your glasses, although you are watching a real life game. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Any other questions? Please feel free to post them. So as I said, what we'll be doing is we'll be posting all of these we'll be posting the actual webinar on YouTube. By next week, we'll have it up there, and we will be emailing it to everyone who signed up using the email address that you actually used to sign up to for this event. So if there are no other questions, I would just like to thank you all, and we look forward to the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Meirc.com